My man, what's up?
What is up? Glad to make it on the show.
Anytime, dude. Yeah, I mean, I don't know why you've been in my orbit for so long, and we only started chatting a few weeks ago, but here we are. So it
I mean, the data space is pretty small, so you know
really is.
we're gonna bump into each other at some point or another.
Yeah, we have a lot of mutual friends, so it's only a matter of time. I guess for people who don't know who you are, do you want to give a quick intro?
Absolutely. My name is Christian. I was an analytics engineer at Netflix. Currently, an analytics engineering professor at UCLA. Previously, I was at Activision, PlayStation, Nike, Warner Brothers, all in analytics engineering and data analytics. I'm also one of the leaders of the Low Key Happy Hour here in Los Angeles. We just did one last month, and then we did one last year. So we're starting to get that up and running here. And also, fun fact: I actually spoke 12 to 20 times in 2023 for at colleges in SoCal, where I do hackathon mentorships, talks on personal branding and job searching in big tech, because it's really really hard to get in. And yeah, my background in music, I think, really helped me out, like, get to where I am today.
Interesting. Let's talk about that. Before we hit record, we were nerding out on all the synthesizers that I have in my background. Everyone seems to ask about those. Don't know why. Just kidding. What kind of music were you into?
So I we did, like, our band was a mixture between the Arctic Monkeys, Green Day, and the Strokes. So I
Okay,
played guitar and backup sang.
that's
And
cool. Whenabouts was this? Because those are all bands that were kind of like mid 2000s, especially Arctic Monkeys,
yeah,
and that kind of genre there. But what kind of when did you guys start out?
so when I was in high school, I met the lead singer, and then we were like the only two people that played music. And then we started writing songs together and started playing together. We're like, whoa, we could actually make a band. And so then we did. And for me, that made me want to stay in, like, Long Beach, where I'm at right now, because we started going on tours. And I was just like, oh, this is legitimate. Our when we picked up our guitar player, his dad was a manager of musicians all around LA, and in our same, like, genre of alternative rock. So we got around SoCal, and it was a lot of fun. Learned a lot, and actually that kind of dictated where I went on in life. Like, originally I was a finance major. I was really good at math. Those just came naturally to me. But then eventually, like, I wanted to get into marketing, because I was like, all right, the only reason somebody's going to come to this show is because they are like this type of audience. They like this type of music. And how do I find those people that I don't know to come to my show? Because, my parents were getting tired of coming to my shows all the time. I needed to get, the new people.
I mean, not to be that guy, but yeah, your parents showing up for your audience too. It's like, hey, cool parents you got there, Christian. So that's interesting. I used to work in music too. I think there's. Let's dive into that real quick. I mean, what did you learn working in music in terms of being able to hustle and promote? Because it seems like that's maybe some of the threads you're just pulling on right there.
Yeah, I'll even say, like, even fundamentally, when I was in high school, I was in the jazz band. At the top end of the jazz band, played guitar. And one of the things I liked most about it was, like, you can just riff off somebody else, right? There's this chaos. Music is this chaos. Before I got into music, I thought only gods can generate this type of music because they had an ear. But then when I started learning about music theory, that was like, oh, there's actually a fundamental system behind how music works. And for me, very good at math, very liking systems, I was like, cool. We'd play a 2-5-1, and I'm like, oh, I know what that is. That's just the second chord in the scale of a major scale. And then those chords are made up of individual notes. And so what music theory kind of taught me was, like, there's patterns in this chaos.
Hmm.
And that for me was a big unlock. It's like, if I don't understand, like, if this was to music, what is it to marketing? And then what is it to business?
Mm.
And then ultimately, I think that's, like, it's a clear road to where I am today, because, like, I discovered there are systems in the back end. But that was music theory. Um, any comments on that?
Well, it's different. Music theory is definitely different than drawing a crowd, though. So,
So yeah, that was my second point. So like that's what got me into music. And then once I started performing, that was a whole nother thing. That taught me to love the spotlight, how to entertain in front of other people, market myself, but also our group, and really, honestly, the importance of preparation and coordination between other people. And from the music side of things, that got me comfortable in my own skin, like talking on stage, having a show presence. And then later on, I got into streaming video games, and I got pretty big into that. That's why, like, with the whole setups and stuff, I was like, yeah, I remember having to set up lights, LEDs, and now I have a more professional attire. Got my data books over here, and the like. But yeah, that's kind of like what music taught me. It was a lot of like motifs to where like I am today.
Oh, I totally empathize with that. I used to play in punk bands when I was a kid, but I mean, I think every kid played in punk bands. But then I got really into music. Soon I was DJing professionally and making techno and house beats and music and tracks and stuff. But
oh no, I hate techno.
Perfect. We'll get along just great. Yeah, so that's the world I came from, but I think there's a lot of similarities with promotion, because you had to, just promoting club nights and stuff too. Same stuff with the music you hate, but same. It's the same sort of thing where you happen to find your tribe and have people show up at your events besides your parents. My parents never showed up, but there's a lot of interesting corollaries, I'd say, between even like playing live, whether you're in a band or whether you're DJing, and I would say doing stuff like hackathons, meetups, happy hours, podcasts. So
honestly, any way where I can talk to my data folk. Like, I'll say one last thing from the music side. When I got into music, the thing that was a big, other than promoting yourself, you had to talk to other people, like I had to find a bigger band to then like work with. We could work with each other, bring my little audience to their bigger audience. I can open for them. And that kind of led me down this whole thing with like, all right, what is influencer marketing? How does that work? And how do you leverage that for your own personal brand? But also like, really it's just to help out the community. So like jumping on this podcast, I was like, oh yeah, this is a super win-win. Oh, yeah. And plus like, you have your community of data folks. I have my community of data folks. And I'm just like, that's why I do the whole data stuff. So hopefully after this podcast, people are gonna be like, oh, Christian's the LA guy. We need to go to his meetups. And they're always super fun.
Yeah. I think that was cool. I think we posted a picture of ourselves on LinkedIn and everyone's like, holy crap, what happened there? But yeah, I mean, you do events, I do events. It's pretty interesting. Like, to walk me through the LA scene, though, I'm very curious. I've never actually been to the low-key happy hour. And as it turns out, actually, recording this sort of end of January, literally last day of January, I'm going to be in New York next Tuesday for Ethan Aaron's low-key happy hour, which I believe was the first one that was in the US. I went to his second edition at Flannery's, and I believe another one at a later date. They're both fun, a lot of fun, low key, and it's New York. If you're going to be a sales guy, which are kind of forbidden at these happy hours. I mean, especially in New York, you're going to get your ass handed to you. So,
love Ethan. He's actually the biggest reason why we started doing it in LA. But as far as the LA tech scene, I would say that pretty tame. Like, everyone here, like, tech is cool, but it's like, so far it's been kind of like, it's mostly been like college students coming out. And it's hard to get this tech scene out. Like, I've gone to a bunch of DBT events, and even these people, like, we get entrepreneurs that come out. One thing I'm trying to get is like, these people are working at Netflix, people that are working at like, the big Google stuff in Silicon Beach, which is like Santa Monica and these places. And those are the kind of things where like I'm working on trying to reach them. But I would say overall the scene is way more chill than like Silicon Valley, where it's kind of like the TV show. Over here, it's like, yeah, we work in tech and we're chill. We just stay at home, work remotely, and keep to ourselves. Um, and that's what I kind of miss from like the music days. Is like everybody's like super extroverted. They want to always see each other. And in tech, it's like, all right, come out of your house and come and come and share and come and you know share the love of data. But yeah, and it's cool. Actually, my neighbors are all like, I have a guy at Amazon, a backend developer, and we just find each other. We're just like walking outside at like 1 p.m. or 12 p.m. They're like, it's like, what do you do for work? It's like, I work in tech.
Oh
I work in
no, they
tech.
invaded your neighborhood. Yay.
The only people that can afford to live here, I guess. Now.
Exactly. Well, it's sort of a self-fulfilling thing. They keep driving it up to the point where they're the only ones that can live there. But that's pretty cool though. You got some tech neighbors. I don't know. It's interesting. I don't think I've ever had tech neighbors.
I mean, when I saw you on the phone call, I was like, oh my god, like you don't need tech neighbors. You have the immaculate view of the mountains. I can only see the mountains if it rains, and like it's insane.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of techies here. I was actually hanging out last night with Ben Taylor. If you know him, or Jepson Taylor. We're old friends, so we were just chilling.
You're friends with everyone.
This is also true, but not a lot of people. Not a lot of people hang out with it at home. I tend to be more out of Utah than I'm here. So, but that's a story for another day. But
Okay.
yeah, I mean that's pretty cool though. So, do you consider yourself sort of a community, a driver in your community, or a community leader? Like, what would you label yourself as?
I definitely think so. I feel like it's, I'm not doing it alone. I have 4 other partners that are helping out with
that
everything.
helps a ton.
Oh my god!
Well, especially for a city the size of Los Angeles, it's not a village.
No, not at all. And all of the people that I work with are already doing podcasts and everything. So like, it's a great group, and I'm excited to do more with them. As far as being a leader, I absolutely think so. Like, I am trying to go into colleges and like, hey, this is what I wish I learned. And I'm teaching at colleges now too. So it's like,
that's cool.
I'm telling you what you need to do, because, you're going to see Snowflake, and it's better to learn it now on a free pass than, because it's super competitive to get into tech, especially over here. Like, you need to have like a portfolio project already. You need to have, if you want to get into data, like analytics, even, it's just like, show me that you can use SQL, show me that you know how to make a database, or at least like, write SQL code. And then, it's going to go into a BI tool, and how that comes out. But for me, what's interesting and kind of different from a lot of the people that I listen to on your podcast was that a lot of them came from STEM backgrounds. And I come from a very non-traditional, like I came from the business side, and I slowly started moving towards, like, started off with business analytics, and then which was like just Excel work. Oh God, never going back to that ever again.
Don't say that. You're gonna jinx yourself, buddy.
No, I will always try to not. I mean, because I can.
That's a better way of putting it. I will always try not to.
I'll always try not to. I am a wizard at Excel, and because I got tempered.
Finance, yeah, you have to.
I got tempered with it when I was at Warner Brothers. A lot of financial modeling, but then like I can automate all that stuff now. And with a data warehouse and a BI tool. And so now, like, those are my tools of choice. And then I got into like, man, this data is never clean, and I always have to do this. I'm repeating all of these steps. And the whole point of being in data analytics is to make this whole process easier. And then I discovered data engineering. And that's how I picked up your book. Like, oh man, I don't remember. I was actually gifted to it by my friend Ramil. And so when he watches this, he's going to just like totally...
What do you like give it to you as like a white elephant gift or something? Like,
no, he gave it to me for my birthday.
That's dope. Oh, thanks, Ramil.
Yeah,
it's a gift that keeps on giving. That's interesting. So you teach all this stuff at colleges. Like, what are you seeing there? Like, when I got into data, it was like not a cool field. This was back in probably the 1800s or something. It wasn't drawings. It wasn't like a field. Yeah, it was like just cave drawings and. parchment paper and stuff, but now it's like a legit thing and it's competitive, right? So especially for aspiring data people, right? It's suddenly competitive. You got to have a portfolio. You got to do this. You got to do that. Like what are you teaching people? How do they stand out when they're looking for the first job?
Yeah, maybe I'll start off with the landscape, and I
Yeah.
think like it's unfortunate. Like I talked to Cal State systems, and then the UC systems, and what's tough is that the teachers are so far behind in everything. Like they're teaching tools that nobody's using.
Well, give me an
Um,
example. Like what? Like,
so like they're using MATLAB, and I'm just like,
oh crap, that's not used in
like
industry.
SPSS, and I'm just like, like all this time you're trying to learn, like I was like, learn Python, and then like so my brother, he's currently studying computer science at Cal State Long Beach, and I get to sit back and just like look at the classes he's taking because he's gonna follow right along with my path because it's just like we will get you set up, and he's all about it. He's a musician, and he's very wired similarly. And what's crazy is that like his first class was like a machine learning class, and there was no prerequisite for Python, and so they're just like, all right, cool, just A/B split test all this data.
What?
And I was just like, wait a second, like the code in the teacher's notebook said this code might not run. And I was like, oh, like that's
Wait,
the most horrible thing to even see.
what? This class sounds really weird on every level.
It was, and it's crazy because like I had to teach him, and I was just like, all right, so let's walk through this. And I corrected the teacher's code. I was like, it's like I don't know why they're importing all these modules that don't even need to be here. And it's evident that even ChatGPT can do better. And I always encourage like every one of the students there is like, use ChatGPT because you can ask it to write comments on your code and explain to you what's happening. The most important thing is that you need to understand the fundamentals of what's going on. And ChatGPT helps out with that so much. Like we copied and pasted a prompt is like, all right, test all this data using every single machine learning model. And then we had it write Python code, and I looked over it. And I was like, this is pretty good. And it's the bare bones what you need. Like your teacher was adding so much stuff that was just fluff. And yeah, so like I think there's a big problem with teaching the right material as far as like software tools, but also even just understanding it. Like teachers don't understand it. And I would say even across USC and UCLA, what I'm seeing is that professors that are going into this were just computer science students, then going into teaching it with no real world experience.
Mm.
And it's kind of like they're teaching what they think they should. So in my class at UCLA, the teacher and I, like, so we're two teachers. One of them is at Hulu, and then I have me. And like we're both like he was like trained up as a DBA and then moved up and learned everything, and he's crushing it. And so like we both work together. So we had all of that background, and like we're teaching it like how it is, but I've seen it really bad elsewhere. And so that's the current state that students are being taught not the best things.
I can totally vouch for this. I also teach at university once in a while and teach and talk to a lot of people who are aspiring to get into data. And I can echo exactly what you're saying. It's, and actually I was talking to some professors about this too, and they lament about it because it's like, you want to make a course that can stand the test of time. In some cases, if you're, an associate professor or tenured, it's like you focus on research. So the easy path for you is to keep teaching the same class you've been teaching forever, because you need to be looking either like, scrounging around for grant money or working on research. And so your classes really are just like, it's a formality. So there's a lot of, I wouldn't say a lot, but there are definitely professors I've seen that definitely phone it in, and tenured professors at that. They have no incentive. What are you going to do? Fire them? Right? What are you going to do?
They're already
Like,
making nothing.
they make
So
it. I mean, Yeah, and you can tell them, okay, so you need to go change your class. And it's like, well, why do I want to do that? So, I mean, one of these classes is still teaching like Hadoop, MapReduce, and Pig, and for their quote big data class. And I'm like, that's not even like a term that's used these days, or nor are these technologies or practices relevant. They're certainly good to highlight as a historical artifact, like it is nice to know about cave paintings that we talked about earlier, but it's about as relevant to somebody's job if they're just getting out of school. But this is the reality. You're absolutely right, Christian. This is the university system itself. I don't know. I mean, I have a lot of druthers with it in the sense where there's a lot of things I would change about it. But it's so institutionalized. And what are you going to do as a student? Are you going to go to a boot camp, which has, pretty mixed results depending on which boot camp you're exiting from? Or are you going to go to the kind of the blue chip university? And, that's at least, and, the chance of you getting a job is at least slightly higher, but it's also hyper expensive.
Yeah, I know. That's why I talk with my students a lot too, is that like there are students out there just doing free resources like, Alex the Analyst on YouTube. He has his whole free boot camp online. And my friends are going through that, and it's a great one. But
Alex kills.
And so with that being said, I will say though that it's tough. But when I go and do these talks, like I'm like, all right, even though it's tough, like you can do it. Because for me, I got my bachelor's degree in business of marketing. So marketing. And then I did a boot camp. I did a USC boot camp where like they basically just taught you the bare minimum of Python, Flask apps, and creating data visualizations online and data engineering. And it was extremely intense. I actually lucked out. My teachers work at Amazon, and
oh, nice.
I very, very lucky. And another guy worked at a startup, so they had an immense amount of experience. They're still my mentors today.
Sick.
But not every boot camp is like that. But what I was going to say was like, what really helped me out was like, I had the boot camp on my resume, sure. But what really helped me out was my project where I showcased, hey, look, I took this free data set off Kaggle. I modeled the data and I created fact and dimension tables based off of it. And I wrote the entire like flow of how the data works into a Google slide document and pretty much created the data pipeline, said why it's better than what they're currently doing. And I just said they had an Excel workflow. So that's like, it's everything is better than that. And then I outlined like the business use cases behind like what this data is saying about this store called Superstore, which is the Tableau default data source. So it doesn't matter necessarily, like, even though this is the most cleanest data I've ever used ever, it's one of those things where like, if you can showcase that you understand what businesses are actually doing and what they need, they're more likely to respond to you versus like, oh, I'm going to have to teach this person completely like what SQL is or what it is that they're coming in. If you can hit the ground running, that's the best. And so projects, but also hackathons. Like I'm a judge and mentor at like pretty much all the big hackathons here in SoCal. And oh my God, some talent there. Like when you could put that into a competition, and I stay there, like UCLA, they have a 48-hour one. I stay there like probably like maybe like 30 hours worth. I get like 5 hours of sleep.
You sleep on the floor or something? What, do you have a cot?
I go home and then come back.
Okay.
Right away. Yeah. But some people do. Like some people bring their pillows and it's funny. You got
hackathons are insane, dude. I've done some hackathons. I won a hackathon once, and it's nuts. People bring their whole monitor setup and monitors setup, I should say, and a bunch of Red Bull, and like they're in it for a while. It's like, you're going to camp.
Yeah, not to brag, but I'm a 3-time winner hackathon.
Nice.
And and like I think what wins hackathons is not necessarily like how technical you can be, because it's easily to be technical. It's, can you tell the story and showcase that? Like what was cool is the last hackathon I did at UCLA, we had all this data on like lawyer conversations. So one of the students built a large language model around it. And I was like, perfect. This is at the time where like ChatGPT was like, they just released their their public one where you can type in questions and answer it. So it was relatively cool, but they developed their own using an open source LLM, and they were able to create a chatbot where they could say like, hey, this is the current lawsuit I'm going through. What are the likelihood I can win? And then it'll pull up each one of the cases and give you a likelihood and spit out a number. And so I was like, yeah. And I helped that team because they're like, this is what we can do, but we don't know how to sell it. I was like, I got you. This is how we're going to sell it. And it's crazy. Like those kids are going to be in very, very good places. So when you can combine the competitive nature as well as like, honestly, I think hackathons, like data hackathons, have like the worst data ever. Like I have never gone to one where the data was extremely clean. And that's kind of my rife with it. It's like, I feel like it should be relatively clean so people could focus on the storytelling versus like, all right, let me clean this data up and down. But yeah, love hackathons. I love being a part of them. There's that energy there. And being an analytics engineer where like I'm kind of like 50-50 like business and 50-50 data engineer, it brings everything to light because it's like, cool, this is my normal environment. Like give me a crappy data set. Let me create some insights that'll help the business.
Crappy data is the norm.
Yeah, like
I mean,
it's funny when new students get into the workforce. Like, why is this not in the fact and dimension table? Why is everything just everywhere? Why is like some cases are? I was like, welcome. School did not prepare you. I understand. This is the norm.
It's a big bait and switch, though, right? I mean, it's a common thing I see, and I'm glad some schools, they do capstone projects where you have to go out and meet with a company and work with them, and I think that's good experience. I would almost prefer that that's sort of taught from maybe the if you're in a 2-year master's program, for example, like that should be taught after about probably the first quarter of the class, after you learn the tactics. Sorry, my kid just came home and he's playing his recorder. So he's got his friend over too. But no, I mean, like interfacing with the business, learning the data is not clean. It's all this stuff that you mentioned. Like these are, I think, as early as you can prepare people for this kind of stuff, the better. It's like I always think it's like going through like military boot camp, but all you learn to do is like play marching band all day instead of like getting fit and learning how to like shoot guns. And so it's
shooting guns, another one of my favorite things.
Nice,
it's kind of harder here. But
I live in Utah. It's a lot easier.
Just go down the street.
Actually, yeah, you could. But maybe talk about that in a bit. But yeah, so I mean, when you're teaching these classes, I'm guessing you probably take a different tack than some of the other professors there. So
I mean, one thing I do is like I try to, when I introduce myself to the students, I try to get them excited about like what can be done because they see the high salaries for data analysts, data scientists, data engineers, and they're just like, what is it that they do? And students don't really understand that. And what I usually go through is like at Netflix, essentially they did not have Google Analytics, which tracks like how a website does. So my job was to build that. And what does that allow us to do is it allows us to see how well our blogs are doing. And if blogs are doing well, then we can get more people to stay at Netflix. The big idea with, developing content as blogs or videos is to provide more value to the entertainment. And if there's more value to the entertainment, people are more likely to stay subscribed. And that is, the big thing with Netflix. They want to become the tech entertainment hub for your entertainment. So I do that for every single one of these companies. Like a big one, especially like when there's a class with a lot of guys in it, I'll definitely play up like Activision. I knew every single deal that you got. And I could tell you what the best gun attachment everywhere, like what guns are best on what side of the map. And then they get excited and they're like, oh, how do I do this? And then I hit them with a lecture and then we go into hands-on.
That's training. Cool. That's really cool. That's a lot more applicable to And it's kind of like you got to meet people where they're at too, right? So if you say it's a bunch of dudes, or if it happens to be Carly Taylor, Activision is the one that would resonate the most. So
yeah, I know she does a lot of cool work. I remember like seeing like I remember before I got to Activision, I followed her. And then when I got there, I was like, that was the first thing I did when I went to Slack. It's like, look who I mean, I introduced myself cordially, but I was fangirling a lot. I was like, oh, well, I'm here. And then we got to talk and stuff, and it was cool that one see her like on internal, we had this like internal video thing where they would announce like all the new things that are coming out in the game, and she was there talking. I was like, oh yeah, we're working on that. So that was cool.
That's cool.
And, yeah, and it's cool. Like, yeah, and then Shinran at Netflix.
Oh yeah,
ran your book club.
Yep. Yeah, Shinran, she's awesome too. Yeah, it's funny how closed or tight knit everybody is. Like Carly's one of my best friends, and I only met Shinran a couple times, but she's rad as well. So yeah, it's just funny how everybody's like kind of intertwined, and you see each other randomly at work, I guess, and just so I don't get that luxury because I don't. Really
you see them anymore, when you go to the conferences, though.
Yeah,
keynoting.
Yeah, I see people. I still see people, but it's a bit differently than being on the clock. Like, hey, what's going on? It's really cool. What are you finding like doesn't work when you're trying to teach stuff? I think we're talking about. I mean, we hit on a couple things, but I think there's so many ways that teaching data can go weird and bad. Like, what are your favorite anti patterns when teaching?
Ooh, I like that word, anti patterns.
Yeah.
Kind of some of the stuff, like sometimes when I'm teaching, like I'll just say for data visualization, for example, I tell people stick to lines and bar charts, and like, well, look at this really cool, waterfall chart. I was like, all right, like, the best part about that chart is if people know what that means. A lot of time in the workforce, you're going to have very simple people. They need to see very simple graphs, and you can get really far with just a bar and a line and maybe a pie chart. But then I talk to them why that's not great.
Yep.
All the time. But, I would say the thing that a lot of people struggle with, and I think it's just how it is like, why do I need S3? And then why is it so hard to connect S3 to Snowflake? And I have to do all of these IM rules and all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, that kind of sucks. Like, you just kind of have to get through that. And, technology is getting better and better than Snowplow. But, sometimes there's a lot to learn, and there's some things where you just have to like accept. And then there's things where like you need to like understand what's going on.
Yeah.
And I think that like that was kind of like my experience learning calculus. And it's like, all right, cool. Like, I just believe this theorem works and it does what it means to do. Mm-hmm. So as far as like anti-patterns, it's like trying to keep the students focused on what's most important and thinking about the big idea. Like, why are we using a machine learning model anyway? Right? Like,
yeah,
let's think about it. Like, you have a multi-lit, you're doing a linear regression, right? Like, why are we doing a linear regression? It's because we want to see, like, are these two variables related to each other? And think in the big picture first. And I'm a big proponent for like answering the question in English and then writing it into pseudocode and then kind of going into it. And then obviously you're going to always have to like run it, see what works, run it, see what works. But that's what makes ChatGPT great, because then I'm like, all right, ask ChatGPT why your code doesn't work. Or, it could be a good study buddy. But I think right now, like an anti-pattern is like people are still like in school anti ChatGPT, even though it could write essays, it could do all these amazing things. Like it's still kind of like looked down upon from the student's perspective.
Oh, interesting. Students don't like it either.
Huh. They like, I would say especially like they like it, but they're not getting the most out of it. Like they don't understand like how to write a good prompt. And so then they discount it completely. And because they have a bad initial first experience. And so what I've been doing is like everybody else on ChatGPT is creating their own, bots. And I use those to help my students. Like I have a job search bot. I have bots that you just see on TikTok. I'm like, I made it for you. And it's just literally me saying, make me a prompt that optimizes this. And it writes me the prompt and then boom, it's a store. But What kind of anti-patterns have you seen? Because maybe I could hear what you're saying, and maybe like I could find something else.
I think the classic ones are assuming that the traditional approach to academia is correct for teaching something like data. And I want to caveat this with I think there are certain classical academic approaches that do work, like when you're teaching statistics. I think that that is a very classical thing that is very immutable and doesn't change, nor does calculus, nor do the fundamental building blocks, math, algorithms for computer science, and so forth. Right? I think these are they're well established. They're here to stay, and I think that the classic academic approaches to those are just fine. They work. They aren't going away. I don't know a world where big O notation goes away, for example. It won't, right? I don't know a world where the central limit theorem goes away, and so forth. But what I often see are academics trying to approach teaching fast-changing topics in the same way, right? So when we're teaching, when you're trying to teach the fundamentals of cloud technologies, for example, right? There are certain underpinnings. You mentioned IM as one of them. How networking works. I think that's well established. So I think but then there's other things, right? If you're trying to teach the nuances of certain technologies, certain databases, I think those are going to change. And new ones are going to come on the scene all the time, and new practices are coming on the scene all the time. So I think it's a matter of like separating out what's immutable to the best that you can versus what's inherently transient. But I feel like a lot of schools and professors simply shoehorn these two things into the same rubric and expect that that is sufficient. And what you get as a result of this is teaching fundamental concepts alongside very antiquated technologies and approaches, and thinking that this is the same thing as helping a student learn everything they need to know to have a successful start in the world of data.
I agree. I mean, this just comes from like not being experienced in the real world. Like,
yep,
it's like you read about what a beach is like, but you've never been on the beach. You've been landlocked the entire time.
Yeah.
And then you're talking about it so textbooky versus like, this is what is realistic.
Actually, I'm going to ask ChatGPT right now, what's a beach like? I'm curious.
Yeah. And that's well, actually, it's probably going to be better than what
probably going to be better. Yeah. And I'll give you an example, right? I mean, there's a popular book, and I was reviewing a second edition of it, and it felt like this person who's writing it is a researcher and doesn't have real world experience. And yet, I'm like, so how are you going to, the world's changed since the first edition of this book. Like, how are you going to, like, in good conscience, write like about this stuff when you don't have any experience in it, and the kicker was when I was giving feedback on this book, being a practitioner, this person's like, well, that's great, except that's not what I read in these papers. I'm like, I can assure you the real world does not operate like these research papers you were just reading. I looked at the research papers. I can tell you emphatically that you should listen to practitioners. And, ultimately this person, decided not to. And I'm like, fine, have a good time writing your book. Well, don't ask me to review it again. Let me see here. What is a beach like? Yeah, okay. A beach is a natural or man-made coastal area where land meets the sea or a large body of water. Beaches vary widely. Jesus, it keeps writing. Beaches vary widely in terms of their characteristics. Here are some common features: sand, water, waves, horizon, coastline, wildlife, activities, amenities, seasons, relaxation, right? So is this how you would describe a beach, Christian?
It's like, no, this is where you go to have family parties. We create sand castles. I'd probably describe it like, probably similar to that, but like not like that. Like it's so textbook and it lacks like, I don't know, personality. And that's the same thing where I see like, but okay, I want to say this though. There's some good teachers out there, right?
Oh, there's some for sure. Like us. Obviously.
But I have to shout out one of them. One of my brother's teachers. He's amazing. He's going to try to be like the leader at Cal State Long Beach, and I'm rooting for him.
Sick.
Like and this is where like you mix critical thinking with this fast moving object, right? That's constantly changing. he had his students design an app, and they use this site called Just in Mind. I was blown away at what you can do with just this. Like, usually for making mockups, like companies would use Figma, and then they'd do a bunch of really cool actions to fake an app, like on your phone. But he taught his students how to make an app with this thing, and it was just like completely made for that. It was, a relatively new technology, and they had to create a business use case and then make an app for it. And I got to judge all of them, and I was like, whoa, now this is great stuff. Like, this is the mark of a good teacher, where their project showcases that they had to research it, had to make sense, and then a product that they can showcase, and it's just a link they could share. And that, to me, as is a good pattern for a teacher, is to be like, leave your students with something that they could put on their LinkedIn. And that's what I try to get them to do as well. Like, so we have a data visualization project. On my first day, we published something to Tableau Public. So that way I was like, you will have this on your resume, on your LinkedIn. And even if you do nothing else, you will have this, and it'll be good enough. So
it's super cool.
So yeah, it's great. Cause like for me, like I have my brother in school. So like I have my finger, like inside of like what is happening, but also like I'm constantly talking to these students and being in these hackathons, seeing what they're good at, seeing what they're not good at. And I think, again, kind of hackathons is the best way to get that like real world experience as close as you can, besides an internship.
Would you do hackathons during your courses? And I think that might be an interesting thing.
They just happen. They don't happen to line up. They happen once a year, and then like it sucks. But I definitely invite all my students. I'm like, you should go do this. It's going to happen after this class is over, but like you should absolutely do it. And then they do come. Sometimes they don't win, but sometimes they win. And
well, then they get an A. I'd say, if you show up and you win the hackathon, you get an A. If you don't, you fail. It's easy as that. It's like Squid Game. No, I never do something so evil as that.
My list of failed students.
Most of them.
Oh my gosh.
Have you ever failed a student?
Yeah, completely. Like, the thing is, like, this stuff is hard, and if you don't bring it, like, you're going to be cut. I kind of follow the Netflix idea of, I mean, like, granted, like, if they seek out help, I try my best, right?
Yeah.
But if somebody's not trying, like, you cut them out, and then it is what it is. So yes, I have failed somebody. They have dropped out of my classes, and it is what it is. And it happens. Like, I would say that the people that drop off most of the time are like people that are trying to pivot into this career. They already have a steady career, and then that's like, oh, this is just too hard. I'm just not going to do it. But usually like the younger students or the people that are just like in the age of college, like they're just like, I need something. It is hard. So those have been the typical use cases, but absolutely. Like, yeah. Because if they can't handle this, you're not going to be able to handle the job market, because it's just harder.
Not at all. Not at all. And like people like you and me are pretty nice. I wouldn't say we're super nice, but we're nice. But jobs can be pretty brutal. I mean, you worked at Netflix. I think is pretty notorious for being kind of a sports team, as I've heard it described as. It's just.
And I was going to say, that's one of my favorite parts about it too. Is like, like for me, like I feel like whenever I was at a job, and kind of like a little bit of background too, like when I entered this workforce, I did a lot of contract work, which is still like really weird for students to like, oh, you did a contract, you don't have benefits. How do you survive? I was like, well, you can buy your own benefits and they're not that bad.
Yeah.
You can make a decent amount of money doing contracts.
You can eat cat food. It's great.
No, they paid more than some of these full-time jobs.
Yeah.
So
this is true.
Yeah. I mean, like I was on Netflix contract and it was really, really good. Insane, actually. They pay, well, like the reason with Netflix, for those that don't know, is like they have this ideology of Netflix, we're not a family. We are a competitive sports team. And the idea behind that is they cut the bottom 20% of people, and they're always trying to like have a high talent density. And so when you hire really, really smart people, they don't need as much, like hand holding or any of this type of stuff. And then honestly, my first kind of like getting into there, like I was like, oh, I wonder how bad this is going to be. Cause like the interview process was rough. But then I got in, everyone's just super nice. Everyone's really good at what they do. You ask them to be like, hey, I need help. Boom. Like they send you a document that has all the documentation that you need. It's just like, these people are on top of it. And that was the first time I've ever been like, besides like the beginning of my career, feeling like imposter syndrome. And here I felt extreme imposter syndrome because I'm like, these people, like after a couple months, like I started getting in the hang of it, because everything they do at Netflix is very open source and like very like they're not using straight up modern data tech stack, Snowflake, DBT, Tableau.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, all right, you got to code all this stuff and you have to understand software engineering. So when I got in there after a couple of months, like some of my teammates like, hey, check out this app that I'm working on within Netflix. Can you test it out? I'm just like, this is crazy. Like you do this on the side and you do my job on top of that. And that's where I really felt the idea of 10X, where Reed Hastings says, like, if you hire a really good software engineer in this knowledge economy, they can do 10X, 100X, 1000X better. And it's worth the top of the dollar that, Netflix is paying them. And I really felt that. I was like, whoa, like my mentors there were beyond this world. And I was like, I tried to be like cheeky, is like, oh yeah, I worked on this at this other company. Like I could definitely help out. And they just kind of laughed. And I was like, oh, it's okay. And then I come to learn that like all the crazy things that they do is like, I would not have even like been able to scratch the surface. Like you are just doing everything. And the way that they do things at Netflix is just completely different. You have so much freedom and it's scary because like you don't have, like my boss wasn't telling me what to do. I had to own my whole entire project, which was scary, but also like very liberating. And I could make as much amount of change as I wanted to. I could change the tech stack. And, I mean, I always got input, but it was also like also getting feedback there. They're really big on feedback. And they're just straight up be like, yeah, this didn't work out very well. It caused lost hours on this. And, I would appreciate it if you would avoid doing this in the future. And like hearing that for the first time in front of everybody, I was like, I'm going to die. But then you hear it the second time and the third time. And then it's just like, oh, okay, cool. Like I can action on it. I can internalize it. Yeah. And after 6 months of it, I was like, cool. Now I can give feedback without sounding like a jerk. And it is very different. It is the most different, but I love it. It is like, it got me hyped because I can utilize all this, but also like the paycheck is crazy. But yeah, getting back to the whole point is taking on contract work in the initial parts. Like I've jumped around jobs like pretty relative because of contract work. And that has allowed me to see how different companies do different things, going from Warner Brothers into Nike, where like Warner Brothers, all Excel work. Nike had a data warehouse, Redshift and Tableau, but they didn't have any Tableau dashboards. They didn't have anything yet. So I was able to bring that to them, automate hundreds, thousands of hours of work. And I made my money's worth. I made the money's worth for Nike, and they still use that stuff today. Sick. And yeah, then when I got to PlayStation, it was the same thing, except it was even more like engineering related stuff. And more, I got to learn about a lot, met a lot of cool people. Like that's why, like in SoCal, I've been at all these companies, and I try not to burn bridges when I'm moving between these contracts. But that is the nature of the game. It's like when the contract's coming to an end, it's either you're converting me or, I got to look for another one. So usually I find the next one that pays 30% more, and you just keep climbing up the ladder, and harder work. But yeah, essentially, and now I'm here where I am. And it's an exciting place to be. It's weird. It's actually a weird play because all the layoffs.
Right. Yeah. Well, it happens on sports teams.
Absolutely. And I internalize it at that with the 1900 people from Activision Blizzard. Like these were my friends. And while it sucked, it's also like, well, Microsoft did just acquire all these, these companies and there was a lot of overlap, but it was not done well. And it was like, it's crazy. If you didn't even know it was coming and then next thing you know, your friend is gone, that is like the scariest thing to be a part of. And I
Wow.
was sitting there with my friends at Activision. I was like, oh my God, are you okay? Are you okay? And yeah, some of them didn't make it. So, I mean, they're
Jeez.
alive, but they didn't make it through the cuts. So,
The Grim Reaper.
yeah.
Sucks, dude. Yeah. I've seen that happen at other companies, and it's not a fun day. It just, and how layoffs are done too. I think it depends on how people expect it to happen. Some people have gone through. I mean, there's been companies where that happens so often that it's just like, cool, who's next? But if you're not used to that, especially if it becomes as a surprise, that's completely jarring. I can imagine, and I've seen it happen, and it's been laid off before. It ain't fun at all. But it's. It sucks to say, but that's just kind of the reality of today's world, And I would say for people listening, especially if you're somebody still in college, looking to get your first data job, just know that this is the cycle. This is the circle of life of data work.
Yes, and also build your emergency fund.
Oh yes, yeah,
it's super
yeah,
important.
Sure. It's big.
So that way, you are not going to be ruined 6 to 12 months. Like keep it in cash, high yield savings. I put half in my brokerage and then half in my high yield savings, and then you'll be safe. It sucks to have to depend on that, especially if you have a family. You have to have an emergency fund.
Big time. I know that kind of stuff saved us, and yeah, I mean, just get in the habit. I would say the other piece of advice is just live below your means, because you'll finally start making good money, especially if you're just living on a student's wage or lack thereof. Typically, I think it's tempting early on to want to go play the game, go buy all the nice stuff, get all the accoutrements of
all those synthesizers,
all the synthesizers, right? Yeah, I mean, it should have to go buy that, or whatever. I mean, a lot of people get the new car, they get the the big house and stuff, and I'd say maybe hold off on that for a bit, like build up the money, like you say, and build up the cushion, and learn how to operate at probably a couple rungs below where you even your friends are at, because the last thing you want to do is be like a lot of people who are just overextended and something happens, and that's not a fun situation to be in. I mean, I've seen people that are making mid six figures even, and I mean they're basically like one paycheck away from losing a lot of things, and that's a crappy position to be in, especially when you work that hard to get to that position. You're still stressing about money. It's you think that you should be enjoying yourself, but the stress of that, financial stress is a real thing. So
I that's like the bottom of the hierarchy of needs of Maslow's. Like I make sure that all of that safety, all of those things are met, because otherwise, if that's not even met, I can't actualize. I can't do any of these things efficiently. I have to beware of my safety. And that's what I love, though. That's what I love about teaching, is that like with my mentees, like I just helped my mentee land her first 6-figure job. And
nice.
It was so exciting.
It's cool.
And I was like, you can level up. You can move out of your parents' place. You can do stuff. I would recommend staying. I told her
parents can move in with you.
Yeah, they could. And
I'm kidding.
they could not. Not at the house prices in California. Heck no. They're gonna have to pay a rent to you.
Well, they got overextended at their last job, and here they are. So this actually does happen. But joking aside, that's really cool that you had your student that landed such a cool gig. So,
dude, my students are great. Like the ones that are crushing it, I feed them. Like I'm like, all right, this is what you need. Like I got this job that I don't really care about. Here, you want it? And I just send it to them, because recruiters are hitting me up 24/7, constantly interviewing. And it's just like, if I can give this job, like I know this student can do it. It's just SQL and Tableau. Like you can do that.
Yeah.
Like we have taught this in class. This is totally within your wheelhouse. And I would say, like, if I were to be like, all right, 20 years from now, whatever, like I think I'd want to retire being just a teacher and just doing that all day. But first, I want to become financially independent by 35, so that way I don't have to work and I could just live like Joe Reese and write a book, do podcasts. And
I don't think
just,
you want to do that, man. Writing a book is one of those things where you're. Sounds fun. Maybe I think you could actually do a good book, but I wouldn't advise it as a goal. It's rewarding, but it's a form of punishment.
man, I think it could open a lot of doors. My dad just published his first book, so that's why I'm just
what was your dad's book about?
He published a coloring book, but
that's pretty cool.
But yeah, he just published it yesterday, and we got the print up, and I was like, "Whoa, Dad, you're published!"
Oh, congratulations! That's
nothing
cool.
compared to writing the foundations of data engineering, but it's on my list of go-tos. I want to keynote speak like you. I want to be published, financially independent, and this year my 6-pack abs. Like that's gonna happen.
Well, you've been doing 75 hard though, right? So it must be a way to do. How's this been going so far?
Yeah, I'm on day 31, and I'm already down 10 pounds.
Nice.
And I did all my workouts and stuff before this call, so I'm already done. All I got to do is just eat my meals today. It's going really well. Like I wanted to do it because this is my third time doing it. So I've completed them.
Explain 75 hard for the audience who doesn't know what that is, because we're just sort of geeking out on a bro science here. So
yes,
or Bordeaux science.
So for those that don't know what 75 hard is, essentially it's 75 days where you have to do two 45-minute workouts. One must be outdoors. That's easy to do in California. Follow a diet. I do a macronutrient diet where I do 40% protein, 40% carbs, and then 20% fats. Take a daily progress picture. Drink a gallon of water. For those that are on the screen, you can see my gallon. I already finished it, so this is my second gallon. No alcohol or cheat meals, and then you have to read 10 pages of a book. And so far this year, I've already read 2 books, and I'm reading my
coloring book. I'm just kidding.
I already read yours.
And I noticed you had on your Instagram you had a Reed Hastings book. Which one of those? No rules.
Yes, no rules.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, for those that read, I highly recommend like a Kindle, like because it's just so easy. Like it's like reading a really big blog post,
and
it's pretty awesome to just keep scrolling, and then next thing you know, your 10 pages are done.
Oh yeah, I have the Paperwhite one, the small one, because I take that traveling. Because I have like 1,500 Kindle books or something like that on there. But
sheesh. You gotta tell me the secret. If you're buying all those books, that's crazy.
Well, I read abnormally fast. But it's also super convenient because you can read at night and you won't screw up your eyes. So I try and read on the iPad. I do it in the morning when I'm on my spin bike. I always spend like 30 minutes to an hour on my spin bike just reading.
I do too.
Doing like Zone 2 stuff, but like at night I can't stare at an iPad. My eyes just like burn. You get to be my age and everything just hurts, including your eyes and your soul. But that's a different story. So
I get that too. Like I'll start reading and I'm like, oh, like dyslexia is kicking in. And I just can't understand what I'm reading. But
75 hard though. Yeah. So why did you get onto that? Like, how did you hear about it?
Yeah. Like I have friends that are in sales, and so like they do 75 hard. I guess it's toughening their, getting rejected all the time. So they
can just go try and date. That's about the same thing.
I mean, that too, and you could do that as well, but it's hard to date when you can't drink alcohol. So,
yeah.
But I mean, it could be, I've done it. So, but like, anyways, with 75 hard, why did I get into it? It's really to set up these patterns, right? If anybody's read Atomic Habits, it's about stacking healthy patterns over time. So with 75 hard, I use this app called Streaks where I get to push a button whenever I finish something. It does this really nice clicking noise where like ding, it gamifies it. But I also do other things where if you're listening to the podcast, I have this app called Streaks where I have to click a button and it'll say I finished it. And then what it shows you is like how many times you finished it. So it'd be like 30 days straight, So I habit stack meditation as well as journaling and taking supplementation every day. Um, and that way, like I could habit stack and become better, because something that kind of like during the last of Q4 and Q3, there was stuff that happened in my life, and it just like it made me fall off, and I wanted to get back into this mindset of like grinding perfectly almost. It's like all these things just help you. And then once my mind is like open and free, like exercising and getting all these things, it's like I feel like a superhuman and I can just do so much more.
Yeah.
So
That's
yeah,
cool.
I feel great.
I actually just bought Streaks. I'm gonna try it out. It's hard. When I first came across, I think it was Andy Frisella, who was he used to listen to his podcast a lot. Then he kind of went off on this weird, like, kind of conspiracy binge, and I kind of lost faith in him. But yeah, he would say, he's a guy who started a supplement company. He always prides himself in being like this fat, dorky guy who then got really ripped, and and he's yeah, I mean, he's a bro, but he's a kind of bro you'd go hang out with, I guess.
I didn't learn about his podcast till after I started.
Oh, interesting.
And so then that was like, for me, is like I was listening to it about like how 75 Hard came to be. I just saw it as like a cool, for 75 days, I'm gonna really do this all or nothing type of mentality, which my therapist says is not good, but I'm gonna do it anyway. And I loved the gamification of it, because that's the hardest thing, is staying consistent over time. And plus this got my data thing going, because within Streaks, granted, you have to be a person inputting this data, but I can see like how often am I doing what I say I'm doing? How often am I saying maintenance to my diet? How often am I doing cardio? And this app allows me to use data on myself that I could then track over time, which is really cool. I don't know. For me,
it's super cool.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm the kind of guy. I mean, if I look at my computer, I mean, I literally have a spreadsheet that's been tracking my workouts since, I think, almost over 10 years now. Every workout I've been doing goes into a spreadsheet, and they have to like add new tabs because it runs out of space on the old ones. There's just so many of them. Yeah, I mean, there's like thousands of workouts in there, but it's interesting, like seeing a progress over time. But habits are one of these things where, like, working out's a habit for me. I feel weird if I'm not, but there's other stuff like, I don't know, maybe I'll just go have junk food, because why not? That kind of stuff is, I mean, yeah, could do better, could do worse, but
if you track it, right? Like, let's say like, if you think you're only doing junk food once a week and you start tracking, like, oh wait, no, I'm eating junk food like 5 times a week, then this is a metric that you can action on.
Yeah.
And then it becomes like, oh, this is what 1 week actually feels like, right? It's like when you're doing a plank, you're like, oh, a minute's not that long. And then it's the longest minute of your life.
Yeah. Unless your goal is to eat junk food every day, and then you want to track that habit and make sure you're doing it every day. I don't know. You lift a lot too. I thought you lift or CrossFit.
Yeah, actually. So when I bought my house, the first thing I wanted to do was build my home gym. A little story on that, actually. So I built it all completely out, but in 2020, when it was amidst COVID, I fell into this opportunity. In 2019, I learned how to code and do all this cool stuff. And I was like, dang, I can't buy a single barbell because all the gyms are closed. I need to lift. So I go on OfferUp, and this guy sold me like a barbell for $800, and I bought it. And I was like, I hate myself. And I asked him, I was like, why is this $800? I asked him really frankly, and he was like, I bought it on the website. And I was like, he was like, do you mind if I ask how much you got it for? So you could look on the website, but it was probably like $330 to my door. And I was like, that's insane. Like, why did I just buy this? He's like, because I sat there on the website 8 hours a day, clicking refresh and waiting till it got opened. And I was like, 8 hours a day, huh? There's gotta, and then I went home. I was like, there's gotta be an app or something that refreshes a site and it can notify me when it does that. And I found it. I found the app that does it. And I set up bots to trigger on all of the big things: barbells, weights, dumbbells. And over a span of 3 months, I became an unofficial reseller of gym equipment. I bought over $80,000 worth of gym equipment and then just sold it on to OfferUp. And from all of that, like I was able to build the ultimate gym. I got to try all this equipment and then sell it because it was already whether it's used or brand new, the price was the same because if you either got equipment or you don't. And I don't know if it's the right term, inelastic or elastic good, but it's one of those economic terms. So I built my whole entire home gym while I was at my parents' house. And then when I moved, I built my whole powerlifting gym. I have dumbbells that go up to 225 or 265
Jeez.
pounds.
Wow.
From in 5-pound increments. I have a rack. I have a functional trainer within my rack. And it's pretty cool. That's like, I don't spend money on very much things. And honestly, all the money I made, I just kind of put it into my garage. I was able to put walls in the garage, an AC heater, and all the gym equipment. That was all from my profits from 2020.
Damn.
And yeah, so I built that with my hands. I got to try out all the equipment, found ones that worked, that it didn't work, and I was able to sell it for a profit. And I logged all of that. And it was so cool to see like what my average margin was and everything. So it was really cool.
That's so cool. What's your favorite barbell?
Oh, the Ohio Power Bar, 100%.
It's a good one. Yeah.
The knurling is
from
great.
Rogue or?
Yeah, Rogue.
Yeah.
Rogue Ohio.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with Rogue's equipment.
Most of my stuff is
solid. Yeah, I mean they do a good job. It's expensive, but you get what you pay for, and it's heavy. Everything to make
their
is
weights.
The weights are heavy for obvious reasons. Well, I mean, but the racks. I mean, even like their bench, it's like $700, and the thing is a tank.
Yeah, so this is where like I diverge from Rogue because I felt like some of their stuff is worth paying the money for. Their barbells, they're gonna last. However, when I went to go look at what are the best racks to buy, what are the best dumbbells to buy, like Rogue is just completely overpriced. I did a whole analysis on like which ones to get, and I came down to Rep Fitness. They have the best value racks, the best value urethane dumbbells. Everything is a value play. They are all about optimizing the space for your garage gym. Rogue is different. They are CrossFit Games, right? Like their target market are these gyms. And so yeah, I was able to save a lot more money.
Oh yeah, those racks are not cheap, dude. Not at all. I mean, as I'm staring at my Rogue Echo bike that I have in the next room over there. I don't know if you ever had those things are evil.
Have you ever done the 50 calorie challenge? How fast you can do 50 calories?
I'm not that dumb. I'm just kidding. I've seen some people do it though. I think what some guy got it in like a minute or under a minute. Yeah, I thought it was like anyway. It was
definitely under a minute.
Yeah,
I'm just like that's the rough. Like for me, it took me like 5 minutes and I was already dead. Like I was like breathing hard for like maybe another 20 minutes.
I think the fastest I ever got 50 calories on that bike was a minute 40 or 45, which is okay, but you're dead.
You're dead. That you're done working out.
And that's when I was doing because they have the Tabata setting on there, so I was doing Tabatas like five times a week. Yeah,
love Tabata. I do that too. I have like 4 squares inside of my garage gym, and I invite my friends, so then we'll just like all move. You know, when the bell rings, it's just like that way it could be social.
Yeah, that's fun.
Burpees. Then I have the Echo bike, and I also have the Ski Erg. Ski Erg is my absolute favorite. Use that for warming up.
I love the Ski Erg. I use it for warming up too. You hit your shoulders a bit better. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I have I also have a Concept 2 rower just sitting out there, which I use every day, but that's because it's just a great piece of endurance equipment. So, or anaerobic, whatever you want to do. It'll also kill you. Not the same. It won't kill you the same way the Echo bike will, though.
The Echo bike is the devil bike. Like that is like, it's crazy. Like just, that's why I bought it, because like nothing could win me as much as that bike can. Like, you know, you can go sprinting on a regular like bike, but that thing is just, I've never felt so out of breath and my BPMs just like bursting out of my chest.
Yeah. So for the audience, like we're talking about fan bikes here. So there was the classic one everyone uses at the gym, or most gyms have, is the Assault bike, which is it's good, but it's chain driven, so you can kind of cheat the workout just by revving it up real fast and just keeping it going, and then you can get off the bike and you'll probably earn a few more calories that just goes into the monitor. With the Echo bike, it's belt driven, and just when you stop, it stops. There's nowhere to hide. It's way harder and it sucks. The fan's big, everything about it just is a torture device.
And if you're a 90s kid like me, to paint a picture, the first episode of Pokemon where Ash is trying to charge up Pikachu, that's an air bike.
Yeah, these things are evil.
You have all three of them? That's crazy. Do you have
I only have I have a spin bike, like a Kaiser M3, just a really nice spin bike that I use just every morning when I wake up, just to go. I feel like if I'm going to read on iPad, I should just do it while I'm at least like doing something active versus just lay there and like the device stuck in my face. So I always spin bike, and then row bike. The Echo bike I use, but it's you got to get motivated.
Yeah, I agree. So I have a 3D printer, and I've built my own iPad holder and
sick.
the cup holder, so that way I can kind of read. But if you're on an Echo bike, it's really about like you can't do anything but do the Echo bike because you're going to be shaking that whole thing.
There's no like this isn't the bike you're using to like watch TV or
no.
Like you ain't watching TV after this thing. By the way, you're going to be dead on the floor. So,
and plus, it's loud as hell because it's a fan going.
It's so loud. It's so loud. You can barely hear a podcast if you have that on. So,
oh my gosh,
that's cool.
I'll have to give you the tour.
Yeah. I was gonna say I need to come by and do a workout sometime. I hope to be in LA at some point this year, and be dope. Yeah, if you're ever in Utah, come up here, do some workouts, or we just go hiking. It's more fun actually, and then go shoot guns. So
yes, and play. We can jam. I'll bring. I don't know. What do you not got over there?
Guitars. I have an acoustic guitar laying around somewhere, but yeah, bring a recorder. I'm just kidding.
No, your son has that. I could just
he has that. Christian, it's been awesome talking to you, man. For people who want to find out more about you, how can they do that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on your podcast.
Anytime, man.
Amazing. You can find me on LinkedIn, Christian ChristianIan Bourdeau Bourdeau. And yeah, like I pretty much try to give as much advice as I can on like how to get into data. You're going to see a lot of memes that I made on there as well. Sick. But also, I'm a teacher, so I tried to help students when they publish their projects. But Joe, thank you so much for having me.
Anytime, man.
Shoot, let's do it.
Let's do it. All right. All right. Take care.
Take care.